Welcome to Pondering Psalms. We are pondering Psalm 102 today. And my friend Dave and I are going to dive into this. We're going to look at all of the passages and see what God has to say. So stick with us. We'll be right back.
Check the... Oh, there you go. All right.
How's that? I'll be right back. Love it. Love it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dave.
Yeah. Anyway, someone sends flowers and she goes, this was really nice. Why don't Mormons send flowers? And someone goes, Mormon can't send flowers? Well, I knew they couldn't,
So here we are pondering Psalm 102. So we have been going quite along. My friend David Mullins, where is David? There he is. All right. So David Mullins and I have been doing this since we started with Psalm 69, right? And we are now at 102. So we've done quite a few and feeling pretty good about it. At least I was until I got to 102. And then I lost all energy for it.
What's the deal with 102?
I think, so we were reading the Psalm of Ascents.
Okay.
Right. They were celebration. They were beautiful. They were just beautiful. And then 102 goes back to the kind of the feel of a psalm.
Yeah. Well, a feel of a lament. And you don't have to get very far into the psalm to recognize this because it's right there in the title, a prayer of one overwhelmed with trouble, pouring out problems before the Lord.
Right.
Welcome to my world.
Well, and that's the reason why Psalms resonate, right? Because we all can. And I again, as we've talked about in the other Psalms, I've underlined stuff and I've divided it up. This is the way they're written. It's a form of writing, and so like I have verses 1 and 2 really to me speak to me when I'm sad. 3, 4, 5 are another verse. 6, 7 is another section. 8, 9, 10, 11 is another. In my as I was reading it, and so let's jump into it. How do you want to do that today?
Well, I was just going to say I struggled with this too because, and I'll share why. But I think I've found a resolution at least for myself.
Good. I'm glad.
I know. I see how you are. Some people's kids.
It's about time you struggled.
Yeah. And it is a lament. It seems like this person is ill. He's really having some challenges, and we're not going to have time to look at this verse by verse. You had mentioned, verses 1 and 2, where he's saying, listen to my plea, don't turn away from me in my time of distress. Bend down and listen, and answer me quickly when I call to you. And then he starts his whole complaint.
Yeah. Wah.
Goodness. Wow. Where's the compassion here? I mean,
3, 4, and 5. All right, let's break it up. 3, 4, and 5.
His heart's sick. He's got like this fever. His bones burn like red hot coals. So, I don't know what they did for fever in his day. I mean, they didn't take, what do we do now? Advil, Tylenol, something like that to get the fever down.
You just, you'd have to, put a cold cloth on your forehead, kind of to kind of reduce a fever. But I mean, it's over the top, I think. I mean, I don't mean over the top. I mean, given the whole context of this passage, of the whole thing, it's like he's writing the extreme of how he can feel.
Yeah.
All right.
He's sick. He feels alone, like an owl in the desert, like a little owl.
I like verse 6 and 7. I'm a birder, so I love the fact that
a bird on the roof.
Yeah,
all by itself. Do you feel bad for those birds when you see them? They're just all alone on the roof.
Well, that's the other thing that I didn't like about it was like I like it when the bird is up and an owl in the forest. And in full disclosure, I'm a vegetarian deer hunter. And so I go out and sit in the woods and just, watch them walk past. And I'm not very good at it. But when you're out early in the morning, you're hearing the owls call.
Yeah.
I love that. It's just the
Well,
best. So to me, it's hard for me to go, oh, solitary owl. Yeah, they are solitary. They're out there in the middle of the woods. Um, anyway,
and and that's not what he wants. He wants friends and family to
yeah,
be there with him, but he's sick, and his enemies are mocking them because, again, in that culture, I think in that culture, if you were ill, it meant God's displeasure.
yeah.
You
Now I
know,
will say, verse 9 and 10 were very visual. I
yeah,
eat ashes for food. I mean, that was really. That was like, okay, this guy's really struggling.
yeah,
I mean, you could almost kind of get a sense of what that would be like to have that in your mouth and your tears dropping down into your drink
yeah,
because you just are weeping to so much. Um, and then verse 10, why?
yeah.
Because God's anger.
Yeah.
Um,
Again, that was the worldview that if he
yeah,
were ill, God is showing his displeasure. Nowhere in here does it talk about, his sin or what he thinks that he even did wrong. And it doesn't even say that, hey, I didn't do anything wrong and you're doing this. I mean,
yeah,
he's just basically dealing with how he feels at this moment.
yeah.
Um, Life passing away swiftly as the evening shadows. I'm withering away like grass. And thus my problem at the end of verse 11. Were you going to say something?
No, I.
Yeah. Because you're in this state, all right? Lonely, sick, feel like God's anger, and then you go to the very next verse, but you, O Lord, will sit on your throne forever. I'm falling apart here, but you, O Lord, and it isn't sarcasm. I mean, he switches gears, which maybe this is the great part of the psalm. He switches
Yeah.
gears so quickly. Just boom. But you, O Lord, will sit on your throne forever. Your fame, you will arise. Now is the time to pity Jerusalem. Now is the time you promised to help her. All of a sudden, he's just his head somewhere else.
So as I'm reading this passage, though, Dave, through the week, was this written? I didn't look at any commentaries. I didn't look at any notes in my Bible or anything, but I got the sense that this was probably written after the destruction of Jerusalem.
I don't know. I would assume so. I don't remember if any of the commentaries said anything. I do know some of the scholars believe it was two psalms put together.
Oh, I didn't realize
Which,
that.
yeah, well, I mean,
Well, I mean, that's what people think, right? I
well,
mean,
yeah, and I can see why they would think that because there is this huge shift between verse 11 and verse
yeah.
12, and so sometimes the scholars are like, is it a lament? Is it a hymn? What are we dealing with here? And I kind of chuckle because it's almost like they think, oh, the psalmist can only do it a certain way. They have these certain things that they have to do and they have to fall within these lines. And if not, then it means something else is going on. It's like, you know what? Maybe this guy just felt like, maybe this was a different day. Maybe,
Well,
Wednesday he's feeling really down and sick, but, he starts feeling a little better and his eyes lift up and see that God is there. And all of a sudden he starts thinking about Jerusalem. Or maybe he started thinking about Jerusalem because of how he was feeling.
yeah, and yeah, I think the other thing that really I loved about this passage is verse 14. 3 years ago, when you and I were reading this, and for those of you who are joining us for the first time, Dave and I read the same psalm every week, every day for a week, and then we talk about it. And we've been doing this. Dave introduced this to me 4 years ago. We started on Psalm 40. At that point, that's where he was, and so I joined him on chapter 40, Psalm 40. But I can remember getting to 102. And verse 14, for your people love every stone in her walls and cherish even the dust in her streets. And it really resonated with me that the people loved Jerusalem so
Yeah.
much. And to see her, being mocked or to see the city in
Desecrated.
ruins,
Desecrated.
desecrated.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about my own home. I don't remember if you remember that conversation, but I was telling you about, I get that because I love my house. I love my backyard. I love where I live. Noblesville, it's okay. But my house, I like it. And I could resonate with this writer of the Psalm to say the people love Jerusalem and it's been desecrated, and you are going to you will arise and have mercy on us. You'll have pity on her. And the Lord, in verse 16, the Lord will rebuild
Yeah.
Jerusalem. He will appear in his glory. So that's kind of the prayer of, um,
Yeah. Go
well, it's
ahead.
the prayer of this writer of, God. And so even though he's making a declaration of this is what it's going to be like, you can get the sense it's a prayer, right?
Yes.
God,
Yeah.
you will sit on your throne forever. Your
It,
fame will be for every generation.
and I think verse 17 at least gives me a little bit of a clue of what's going on in his mind.
Yeah.
Because then he says he will listen to the prayers of the destitute. Well, that's him.
Yes.
He's destitute.
Right.
He will not reject their pleas. But it's just one verse. And then, if I remember right, he switches gears. Yeah.
That's
Yes.
where that's where I have another line drawn. I've
Yeah.
I've got several lines in this in
Yeah.
my Bible where it's a shift of a gear and a
Yeah.
shift of a gear.
Yeah.
And I love the recorded people not yet born.
Yeah.
Oh, praise the Lord. I
Yeah.
love that verse.
Yeah. And if you think about it, Kurt, we are a long way away from verses 1 through 11 now.
Yeah.
There's not a lament here. There's an excitement that people not yet born will praise the Lord, that future, generations will see this, tell them the Lord looked down from his heavenly
Yeah.
sanctuary. He'll look down to earth from heaven to hear the groans of the prisoners, to release those condemned to die. And maybe he feels I'm a prisoner of my illness or whatever. And so the fame will be celebrated in Zion, his praises in Jerusalem. I mean, it just,
I love it. So in general, this is just an okay. But then when you really start to read it, this is the
Yeah.
thing that came out to me this week as I was reading, Dave. I've had friends tell me that they don't like to read the Bible because it's hard for them to get anything from it.
Yeah.
And I think Psalm 102 is one of the examples where this is true. You read it and it just kind of, you're going through the motions of reading it. But the more you read it over and over and over again, and for those of you who are following us, we're also doing pondering passages. We're not just talking about Psalms, but Dave and I are also doing Ephesians.
Yeah.
And my experience this week as I was reading this passage in Ephesians that we'll talk about later, look for it on our YouTube channel, is the same thing. Hey, blow us up so we can see each other's faces. You just did a great smile that we missed there.
Well, I wouldn't say you missed it.
I missed it. It was very sad that it didn't happen. That as you read it, you can take it bit by bit. Sure, read the whole 28 verses, right? But just read a little bit.
Yeah.
Just read, for me, verse 14, the people love every stone in their walls and cherish even the dust in their streets. Just read that over and over again. What's that mean?
Yeah.
What would that mean to have that kind of reverence for a town or a place? And you can then translate that into, my favorite place to go is Denver, Colorado, or my favorite place to go is down in Bloomington to see Dave. And I'm sorry, we weren't supposed to say where you lived. This is a secret.
Now I got to move. They got to go through a whole thing.
But you have a favorite place now. What's that feel like to love going to that place?
Yeah.
And maybe it's the beach, maybe it's the mountain, but what's that like? Well, this is the kind, then you can translate that and say, this is the kind of reverence, the kind of love that these people had for this place. And they're crying out to God to restore it.
Yeah. And you can get down, I think sometimes we talk, and it's kind of negative connotation, but not really, about getting down into the weeds. And you can look at it that way, or you could, go to a higher level and say, how does all this fit together? Because he's not done yet.
No. Yeah.
And this I think gives a little bit of insight. And I was really reflecting on this piece here. He broke my strength in midlife, cutting short my days. But I cried to him, "Oh my God, who lives forever, don't take my life when I'm so young." And I thought, is that what he's talking about now? And then I thought, I wonder if this was a previous prayer that God has answered.
Oh, great point.
You
I
know
like
that
that.
that this isn't because uh, he talked kind of like God has answered this. I cried to him, and then he kind of again goes off and starts talking about just God creating everything, the foundations of the earth,
Mhm,
made
mhm.
heavens with your hand. They will perish. You'll change them like a garment. I mean, talk about an image, like taking
Yeah,
off old clothes.
I love that. That was so
Yeah,
great.
yeah,
I think a couple of weeks ago we were talking about threadbare clothes, how they become threadbare
yeah,
and just almost thin. The fabric
yeah,
is just so thin. But imagine that God is going to renew all of this
yeah.
to
And
brand new.
and Hebrews, the book of Hebrews, uses some of this passage, I
Yeah.
think, for that reason. You're always the same and you will live forever. And the writer of Hebrews says Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Uh, and that garment, he is renewing the earth. Some people believe that God's going to destroy the earth, destroy his creation because it's so bad. But really
Oh
the
yeah.
hope of the scriptures is that he renews it all. He makes everything I'm doing a new thing, and he renews it rather
Boy.
than
Okay,
destroy.
that's just fantastic. That's so exciting.
It is.
Because if you think, okay, well then let's apply that to our own lives,
Yeah.
right? God's not just going to wipe us away; He's going to renew us.
Yeah.
He's gonna make all things new in who we are.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we look at our lives and go, "I am so broken. I am so lost. I'm not even worth moving to that next. I'm not even worth moving forward." But in fact, God's going, "Oh yeah, you absolutely are. We just need to take off the old and put on the." So when I
Yeah.
was a kid, did you ever sing that song in Vacation Bible School?
No.
I'll tell you the best thing I ever did do. I took off the old robe and put on the new.
Actually, I never did that. I never sang that song. I was just being facetious before, but never
Oh
heard that
no,
song.
because the old robe was dirty, all tattered and torn. The new robe was spotless, had never been worn. I'll tell you the best thing I ever did do. I took off the old robe and put on the new. And that is exactly what God wants to do with creation,
Yeah.
with Jerusalem, and with us.
And with us. And with us. And because he's the same forever, uh, we can live in security and we can thrive in his presence. And
And not just us, right? The
yeah,
children's children
there,
have
yeah,
that
children's
blessing.
children. Yeah, yeah. And I
How
think that
cool.
that goes along with the, taking off the old and putting on the
Mhm.
new, thriving. It's not just about surviving. I don't know. Was it you that talking about people have a word for 20, instead of
Yeah.
your resolution, it's a
We talked about
word.
that last time. Yeah.
Yeah. And I said my word was survival.
It was Psalm 101. We were talking about making that kind of our, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but really, as someone who's a person of faith, we should never just be about survival. It's about thriving in God's
Nice.
presence.
Good for you.
And I think the important thing is those last two words or three words, in God's presence. It's not just about
Yeah.
thriving
Yeah.
according to culture,
Yeah.
what we
Yeah,
hear
because
on
then
TV.
because then your bar is set completely different, right?
Yeah,
Because then that's how much money you have. It's
yeah,
how big your house is, how many possessions,
yeah,
the kind of car you drive,
yeah. This is
the
about
job you
thriving,
have
thriving in God's presence.
in
So
your presence. That's
So
right.
yeah, so I would say even though I struggled with Psalm 102, I did try to stick with it. I knew God had something in it, and sometimes you have to dig a little bit, and when you do and really look at the full picture, there's a lot of stuff that God is revealing in that, his love and his grace.
Yeah.
And even in lament and feeling ill, this guy was able to lift his eyes up and just give praise to God.
Boy, I'm so glad we talked about this.
It's helpful.
I really
Yeah,
am.
yeah,
Because I came into it the same way. It's kind of like, it's okay. It's an okay song. But just even talking about this with you and kind of going back through it, I'm so excited about it now.
I wonder how many Psalms were written and didn't make it. You know?
This is the top 150, folks. We're bringing it to countdown this week.
Were there like a few thousand? And it's kind of like, no, we're just taking these 150. Or the Hebrew, it's 151. There's one Psalm that they kind of split into. But anyway, nevertheless.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, folks, thank you so much for joining us. Hopefully this conversation spurred as much energy in your hearts as it did in mine. Really, really like it.
Yeah.
Really like it. All right. And so we'll be back here in about a week, and we'll do this again. We'll be talking about Psalm 103 instead of 28 verses like 102. It's, I think, 22 verses?
22, I think.
22, I think. And so the other thing I did this week, Dave, just as an aside, I timed myself reading Psalm 102. And I did it not in a hurried fashion. I didn't want to blast through it, but I thought, we talk about, it shouldn't take you long to read through this. So I read through it. At one point, my glasses were on. I couldn't read it very well, so I took them off and I started over again. And I just left the timer running. And I drank some coffee and I went, "Ooh, there's that verse 14. I love that verse 14. Let me read that again." And I read it a couple times. And it took me exactly 3 minutes at a leisurely pace, rereading things, trying to think about certain things. And so I guess I say that if you're, I don't have time to study the Bible. I don't have time to read the Bible. I can't read this every day. You got 3 minutes? You could do that. Do it while your coffee is percolating. While you're making coffee in the morning, just open up the Bible.
Do it before you type in facebook.com.
Yeah, because then you're never going to get back to
it. I know. Just do it before you do Facebook, and it's amazing how much time you find that you actually do have.
Yeah. And what will God speak to you in 3 minutes a day?
Yeah.
All right. Well, folks, have a wonderful, blessed week, and we will see you back here in about 7 days. We'll talk to you later. Bye. He said, "I don't know." He said, "I just don't know what to do." One day I go, I wake up and I feel like I'm a wigwam. And the next day I wake up and I feel like I'm a pup tent. Daggone it, I've screwed it all up. What's the other one, Dave? It's a wigwam and a
teepee.
Teepee. I feel like I'm a wigwam. The next day I feel like I'm a teepee. And then I feel like I'm a wigwam and I'm feeling like I'm a teepee. The therapist says, "Well, it's clear what's wrong." He said, "What?" He said, "You're 2 tents."